Hi everyone, this is Yana Smakula. Welcome back to my channel. Today I have one die set, 5 card ideas for you. I love to stretch my supplies and I love to create multiple cards, but not identical cards, using one die set or any sort of product. It could be a stamp set or a stencil, to see how many different options, how many different ways I can use one product. It really, it gets my creative juices flowing. I have the best time in my craft room when I have it all to myself and I can just play with one product and experiment with all sorts of different ideas. So today I'm creating with a beautiful die set from Spellbinders. This is called Amalfi Breeze, and it is part of the new Dolce Vita Collection. If you purchase the Spellbinders Weekender box and the Weekender virtual retreat that took place at the end of May, this might kind of seem similar or familiar to you, or at least the name La Dolce Vita might sound familiar to you, because the La Dolce Vita was basically the theme of the box, and many of the products from the La Dolce Vita collection were included in the Weekender box. This die set, however, was not included. So this die set is actually not that large. It's an S3, and if you are familiar with the Spellbinders nomenclature, the smaller the number after the S, the cheaper the die set is. And the dies go from S1, which is the smallest die set, and those typically range from $5 to probably $10, to S7. And S7 could be anywhere probably like $50 or even $60. So this is an S3. It is $15.99. It's a small die set, so we have one die to cut the body of a girl and also another die to cut her leg. And this is done so that you can cross her legs and add a little bit of character and dimension to her. I used different colors of cardstock from my stash to die cut the girl. I tried to experiment with different tones, different skin tones. I have one skin tone that's pretty much mine, which is very pale pink. I have another one which is a little bit darker. I have a girl that has a little bit of tan, and I also have one that's pretty dark. So you can, with this die set, you can definitely create a girl that looks like you or one that looks like your friend. When I was making my cards, I have a friend and I had her in mind, and she's actually right now, she is in Spain on vacation. She invited me to go with her, but I couldn't go this time. So when I was making this card, I was picturing her on her holiday in Spain. When you cut these pieces out, the die adds a little etched mark onto the paper, indicating where the two pieces should meet. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. So these markings on the die cuts are very helpful to help you assemble the die set. You also have a die to cut hair for the girl, and this one is done very cleverly because the hair is just it frames the face, so you don't need to cut the face separately. By the way, there's no face to this die set. There are no eyes, no mouth, no nose. And the reason for that, I would assume, is because it's the face ends up being rather small. So adding facial features to this die set probably did not make sense. And to be honest, I don't mind my girl like this without any eyes. But if you do want her to have facial features, you can use a pen and maybe draw that in. There's also a die to cut a swimsuit, and this one is a beautiful die because it adds nice little detail to the swimsuit piece, and you can cut it either from colored cardstock or patterned paper. For all my girls, I used patterned paper, and this one actually was even cut from some wrapping paper that I had in my stash. It had some really nice glossy finish to it, so I enjoyed using this particular paper for the swimsuit. But if you don't have patterned paper, you can just as easily cut this from colored cardstock, and the die adds those nice cut lines to the swimsuit. You can also even use some of your backgrounds. Perhaps you have like a stamped background or a stenciled background. You can use that or create a background. You use your stamps or use your stencils, maybe a floral background or a geometric one. So you can use that and create a background for this cool swimsuit. Another idea is you could even use an embossing folder, emboss a background, and then cut it out using this die. The embossing will flatten for the most part, but you will still be left with some of that texture on the swimsuit. So you can have a lot of different options here. And you'll see that all of my swimsuits are slightly different. Okay, another die in this set is one to create a drink that the girl is holding while she's enjoying the sun. And this one has two pieces, so you can cut the cup and then the lid with a straw from different colors of cardstock and just adhere the lid onto the cup to have a multicolored drink. I just used colored cardstock here and had, a different color bottom and a different color top for the drink so that it looked nice. And I kind of tried to match the color of the drink to the rest of the colors on my card. I didn't talk a lot about the hair, and I wanted to say that as with a swimsuit and as with the skin tone, you can cut the hair from different colors of cardstock. You can have a blonde girl, a redhead, brunette. So again, you can use the hair, the colors of cardstock to have the hair match you or your friend. And now the very last die in this set is this little piece that creates a fringe. What kind of looked deceiving to me when I looked at this die set on the website is I was sure that it also included a beach towel. It does not. So something to keep in mind, there's no beach towel included. What is included is this fringe, and you can use the fringe to create your own beach towel, and it's actually very, very easy to do. You can use a paper trimmer, you can use your scissors, or you can use a rectangular die to cut a rectangle out, or you can also get a little bit creative and create your own beach towel. Here, for example, I was just showing you a towel with yellow and white stripes, and I created that one by using colored cardstock, yellow and white, and I used this die set, this coordinating sentiment die set, to cut strips of cardstock to mimic the stripes on my towel. So that was fun. That was easy to do. I wanted to create a beach towel with the stripes, and I didn't have pattern paper in my stash with that. With stripes that I wanted. I had one with the green and white stripes from some patterned paper backs from my stash, but I didn't have the blue and white and the yellow and white, so I made my own. So here I'm starting with a Cosmic Sky panel. This was cut using a rectangular die from my stash, and I also cut the white stripes using that coordinating sentiment die from white cardstock. Now I'm assembling everything. I'm using glue to glue the pieces together. So I have adhered a fringe on one side. I've added one stripe. Then I've placed a die-cut stripe for spacing. So it's basically a spacer there. And I'm going to add the other stripes to fill the entire beach towel in. With the beach towel, again, you have multiple options. Obviously, using pattern paper is the simplest option, but think about using stamps and maybe stamping a design, or using stencils and stenciling something pretty. You can also stamp a sentiment onto a beach towel. There are so many awesome beach towel, designs out there. And if you struggle visualizing a beach towel, just go to Pinterest and type beach towel, and you'll see loads of options. And maybe that will give you some ideas for the beach towel that you can use for your card. Here, I'm also using a magnet. So I'm working on a Glassboard Studio magnetic glass mat. I love mine. I switched to white. So I have a black mat and a white mat, and sometimes I'll film on black, sometimes I'll film on white. I recently taught a class for Pink Fresh Studios, and I asked the class participants if they preferred the black or the white, and guess what? They said that they liked the gray. So I don't have the gray, but I decided to switch to the white mat for now. And so I'm using my white mat, and I have those large magnets. These are super helpful. I like to use mine whenever I'm gluing something using glue because they apply a nice amount of pressure and they allow the glue to dry beautifully on my panel, and I don't have to play around with, a paperweight or clear blocks to create pressure while something is drying on my panel. So if you don't yet have a Glassboard Studio glass mat, check it out. I really do like mine. It's beautiful. I have not the largest size. I think I have one that's second to largest, and it fills almost the entire table on my desk. So it gives me plenty of space for card making. With the stripes adhered, I'm now using my Spellbinders shears to trim them off. By the way, these scissors are the best. My friend May Park recently purchased a pair, and I was just reminded, how amazing these scissors are. I have 2 pairs in my craft room. I have one that's dedicated for cutting foil, and then I have another pair that I use for any other sort of cutting that I might need to do, but I don't ever use these outside of my craft room, so I will never use them in the kitchen. I have other scissors for the kitchen or, anything else that needs to be cut outside of crafting. These are just reserved for the craft room. Okay, so that's how you can create a beach towel. It's one of the options. Here I have a hat that I created for this lady because, if you are out in the sun, you guys know you need a hat. You need to have a hat to protect your head and protect your face. And to create the hat, I actually used just 2 circle dies, and I added a little string, and the string comes from the stitching die of the month for June. It's a little necktie from the seagull. That seagull, by the way, is fantastic. I love that seagull. I have a bunch of cards created just with that seagull. So here I'm creating my first card. I'm using light blue cardstock for the background here. It's going to be kind of like going to signify a pool, I guess. And I have a yellow and white stripe beach towel. I have my girl. She's wearing a beautiful stripy swimsuit. This one has a white and black stripe. I feel like that always looks really nice for summer, that sort of pattern. So she has her hat. The hat is yellow with the black little top and a blue tie. So you can kind of get an idea of my color combination here. And I'm now working on the sentiment. The sentiment is going to say, "Happy birthday, sending sunshine just for you." The sentiment is a part of this collection. It is called La Dolce Vita Sentiments. This is a better press sentiment. And I created all of the sentiments for my cards today by foiling them using black foil on white cardstock. So I could have better pressed them, but I didn't want to get messy with the ink. Instead, I simply foiled them and I cut them out. If you were a part of the Weekender event, I know that there is a sentiment stamp set included in your box, and I feel like many of the sentiments are similar or maybe even identical. So here I'm playing with the placement for the sentiment. In the end, I'm just going to have the sentiment overlap my girl a little bit. I'm trying to make sure to remove the extra foam adhesive where the overlap is going to happen because I want things to be flush on my card. And what I also have here is I have some tropical foliage because she's in the tropics. She's enjoying the sunshine. She has all of that lush greenery around her. And the pieces that I have, these come from a previous or a past club kit from Spellbinders. I'm trying to remember which one it is. And it is the Grand Tropical Flamingo Large Die of the Month for May 2024. I love that die set. It has beautiful flamingos included. And flamingos are like the main the star of that die set, but the tropical foliage is also included in that set. And as you can see here, I'm pairing that tropical foliage with my beautiful vacation girl. To finish this card, I also added some dots in black These are enamel dots from Spellbinders. I just added them above and below the sentiment to add a little bit of movement, and that was it. It's a simple card, but you can see how I used additional products from my stash to add interest to this design. For my second card, I wanted to create a pool, and not just a pool, but sort of like a little area by the pool where my girl is chilling. So I used Perfect Touch rectangle dies from my stash. And I created a little area around the pool and a pool by using white and teal cardstock. So I'm going to use a yellow background for this card. I already have my beach towel. That's that blue and white striped beach towel. I already have my girl, all the other accessories, and I'm just going to work on this pool. So I use the Perfect Touch rectangles to cut a blue rectangle. You'll later see me change this up a little bit, swap it for a different rectangle, but that's the basics of how I created it. And I also made another sort of like a frame using the same dies, so the Perfect Touch rectangles. Now I'm trying to figure out the best placement for my elements. So I want to have the pool sort of at an angle and then the beach towel a little bit at an angle. And once I'm happy with the placement, I'm going to trim that pool down a little bit, trying to make sure that I don't mess it up while I'm using my paper trimmer. So this is the Spellbinders Guillotine paper trimmer. I love mine. It creates really nice and clean cuts for my cards. So I've trimmed one edge, going to align it, make sure that everything still fits perfectly, and going to trim the other edge before I adhere this onto my card. I have added Best Ever Craft tape from the back. I didn't want to layer another piece of cardstock behind. I just wanted to keep it kind of flat. So I used Best Ever Craft tape, and that's what's holding these two pieces in place temporarily, because I know I'll just use glue to adhere this onto my card front. I trimmed this down a little bit more because the pool just felt a little bit too big for me. And now I'm using glue to adhere this onto my card. So even though this collection does not have a pool die, even though I don't have a pool die in my stash, I can still create a pool by using rectangles and playing with different colors of cardstock. It's easy. So I encourage you to look at the other dies that you might have in your stash and think of objects you can create using those dies. So it's really easy to create anything that's a circle, so a hat for the girl, a beach towel, so a rectangle, and again, more rectangles to create the pool. I used thin foam adhesive squares to adhere the towel onto my card, and now I'm using regular thickness foam adhesive squares to foam mount the girl. This one is a red head, and I even have a nice yellow hat for her. This one does not have a tie, so it's just a hat. And here I decided I needed to add some foliage and change the color of the pool water. I had this panel sitting on my desk. This one was created using one of the club embossing folders from last year. So I embossed this one as I was kind of trying to use it as a background for one of the cards, but it didn't work. It didn't look like it was enough for what I had in mind. Instead, I trimmed this and used it partially as my pool. And I feel like that worked really well for the pool because it added a little bit of nice texture. It created waves in the pool. So it's not just like, a blank piece of cardstock. There is texture, there is movement, and it looked much better than that solid color of cardstock there. If you don't have an embossing folder like this, see if you maybe have a stencil and you can stencil some waves, or a stamp set. Maybe you can even stamp water or waves onto your cardstock. So I also brought the foliage for this girl and for this card. And this foliage comes from that same Grand Tropical Flamingos large die of the month from May 2024. I added a different type of leaves here, and I didn't foam mount them. Instead, I try to use glue and just overlap my girl as much as possible using those leaves. So the idea here is you're looking at her from the top and you can see some of the leaves from the palm trees and the other plants, basically casting a shadow onto the girl. For this card, I also added little oranges and little lemons next to the girl. So she's hungry and she has a little snack next to her. So she brought lemons and oranges. I mean, I know lemons are probably not the best snack just because they're so sour, but she has lemons and she has the oranges next to her. And I feel like they provide a nice little pop of color. So these come from the Beyond the Door die set from this same La Dolce Vita collection. That is a beautiful die set. I don't have any cards to share with that die set yet, but I have the die set. I really like it, and I felt like I could use the little bits from that set to add interest and detail to this card. For the sentiment here, it says, "Happy birthday, enjoy today to the fullest." Love it. My next card is going to be interactive. So the girl is going to be floating on a floaty in the pool, and she's going to spin on this card. So the card itself is going to be very simple, especially compared to the previous cards I just shared, but it's going to be interactive. It's very simple to make, very easy to make. You don't need special tools or special mechanisms to make this work. You just need a circle die. So here I used pattern paper that resembled pool water. This is from my stash. I'll link to this paper pad if it's still available. I cut a little circle opening from in the center of this panel, and I picked the circle size or the circle diameter slightly larger than a large foam square. I also die cut another circle from cardstock, slightly larger than the circle opening that I created. I used a pen and I marked the edges of that circle on my card base. And next, I'm using double-sided tape and I'm adding tape directly onto my card base, but I'm skipping the area where I have the pencil mark or the pen marks added because I want to keep that area free from adhesive. That's where the circle is going to spin. So here you can see how I've added double-sided tape. This is using tape from Alt New. I picked this particular tape because it's nice and wide, and I would not need to add a ton of little paper adhesive strips. I placed the circle in the center, around those pen marks. I adhered my panel, or at least one side of the panel. Next, I removed the liner tape from the rest of the adhesive and adhered the rest of the panel onto my card. So like so. So that circle, that teal die cut circle, is trapped between the card base and the front panel. It's going to move freely in there. It's also going to spin. Next, I created a floaty using more circle dies. So I used 2 circle dies and I created sort of like this circle frame. I added a little bit of ink blending to the edges of the circle, and I thought about adding glossy accents to make it dimensional and shiny, but I kind of was a little bit afraid to do it because this is quite a large die cut. And honestly, I didn't want to wait for a very long time for all of that glossy accents to dry. So if you have the time, if you are patient enough, that's an idea for you to try. Otherwise, I feel like the floaty looks just as nice. At first, I made the mistake and I adhered the floaty onto my card. Do not do that because that's just going to prevent it from spinning. Instead, you can add foam adhesive from the back of the floaty, but do not remove the backer pieces from foam adhesive. Next, foam mount the girl onto the floaty and make sure that there is another foam square over that circle die cut in the center, and make sure the girl is covering that circle because that's our spinning mechanism. So with that done, once you adhere the girl onto the floaty and onto that circle in the center, you can spin it, and that creates a fun little interactive card for you. The sentiment for this card says, "Ciao Bella, hope this day treats you well." And I love it. It's a simple card, but it is an interactive one, and I feel like people love interactive cards because they can play with them. So this one is definitely a winner in my book, and it was very easy to create too. My next card features a color blocked background. I used yellow and pink for the background. I cut the yellow diagonally. I added a little handmade hat or a DIY hat. I used an orange and some leaves to embellish the hat, and I just added a simple sentiment, and this one says, "Thank you, sending warm thoughts your way." Unlike the previous cards, this one is the front panel here is trimmed to 4 by 5¼ inches, and it is foam mounted onto a white card base, so I have a little bit of a white border around my little scene. And the very last card features, once again, the pool. This one was created using that same embossing folder that I featured previously on the previous card with the pool. That's actually the remainder of that panel. Here, I also used a floaty from the Die of the Month for June 2024. And an umbrella from a large die from that same month. And I, again, created a little scene. I have the girl's swimsuit created from red cardstock, and then the umbrella matches the swimsuit color. And then I have a cute little teal floaty and a teal drink for her to hold. So this one is definitely a simpler card, but I still love the way this turned out. So here you can see 5 different card examples, card options, all using just one die set. Of course, I brought a bunch of other sets from my stash, and I could have kept creating. I had other ideas. I was looking for some little bow dies in my stash to add to her hat. I couldn't find one. I don't know. It disappeared. I was also looking for some seashells and like sea stars to create a little beach scene. So that's another option for you. I also wanted to add some additional little drinks or like a beach bag and some flip-flops. I know Spellbinders used to have a die set with those elements, but unfortunately I no longer have it in my stash, so I wasn't able to add those details, those elements to my cards, but I wanted to mention them in case you still have those die sets and in case you want to give that idea a try. So if you decide to create with this die set, check out your stash, see what other little pieces you can use to add to the scene. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks so much for spending time with me today. I hope you had a blast. I know I surely did. Love you guys, and I will see you again next time. Bye.